Patrick, every time I hear this intro, it reminds me a little bit about Seinfeld, which of course is a show which both of us
Yeah,
love a lot. And um, I guess without revealing too much, it's also a show which you and I have decided to commit a lot to in terms of our love
yeah,
for the show and to with different aspects of it. I feel like that's something which came so naturally to you and me,
very
Patrick.
much so.
For some, yeah.
Very much so. I mean, I'm currently looking at a list of words that we use between you and me as running gags to describe
Yes.
certain projects. Rochelle is a great project name to speak of the internationalization of a company, for example.
Yes. Uh, and there's several other classics from the Seinfeld universe we referenced there
Pretzels.
as well. And I think that, believe it or not, Patrick, I'm setting us up for what we're going to discuss. Believe it or not, I'm actually right. And that's because I think for both you and me, it comes so naturally, and we don't need to force it. And we've kind of it's something that sort of is in resonance with what we are seeking. And I think that is kind of along the lines of a unique insight or a unique sort of I'd say like a philosophy, which could also be a life philosophy, but it's perhaps even more profound in the context of startups and venture that you just shared with me right before we started.
Okay. So hold on. Is the topic now Seinfeld?
It could be. I mean, I'm sure we could speak for hours and hours on Seinfeld, but more specifically, where I was going with this was on connecting with something and feeling a deep sense of resonance
Hmm.
through a process of
Okay.
identifying, uh, not trying to force fit something, but to fit in more naturally.
Got it. Yeah. So um, I'm a big fan of self selection. And by that, I mean, you could also interpret it in a Darwinistic sense if you wanted to go very far. But so my love for self selection is not necessarily the multi generational biological self selection. Um, stay nearer term, I like self selection in multiple business functions. You know, whenever you deal with people on the other side and you have to figure out, hey, are we made for each other? That can be recruiting, that can be you're looking for investors, that can be your customers, that can also be your suppliers. So there's multiple business functions in which people on two sides want to actually figure out, hey, are we made for each other? And self-selection is one of the most powerful tools to find efficiency in matchmaking. So let's talk about self-selection and the same way that you and I have clearly self-selected ourselves for Seinfeld.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I think I feel like it's a very simple word or a combination of words, and yet I feel like it's used a bit too loosely at times. I feel like I think when you and I think of self selection, we think of a process of elimination or
Hmm.
filtration, right? I feel like in the context that I see people think of self selection, they think of either fitting in, right, or molding into some template that's been given by someone else, or convincing and like, hey, we'll convince the other person, that we fit, or we are made for each other. And I feel like that's now that is also an approach to hold, and I feel like a lot of them hold it. But what do you think, Patrick? I mean, what's the in your mind? Why not go that way? Given that it also seems the more popular way to do it.
It's funny that you say that. I actually don't feel or think of self-selection as a filtration mechanism. That's not how I think of it. So for me,
Oh, interesting.
so
Okay.
one of my majors in high school was actually biology. And by the way,
Mm-hmm.
not an expert anymore. This is a long time ago. But
You're always learning. Today I learned
yeah,
something new.
exactly. And by the
Yeah.
way, I was very, very good at it. I had a great GPA. Um,
Answer. Yeah.
but in the end, didn't pursue a career there. And one of the things that I think of in terms of self-selection is so you could take biology to the Darwin direction. That's not mine. Or you could take it also to microscopic and cell level. So if you think
Uh-huh.
of mRNA, or
Mhm.
viruses more in general, or even vaccines. They are designed in order to activate with a very specific counterpart on the cell
Mhm.
level, right? And so they just ignore all the other elements of your body where they don't connect to. Like literally, they don't connect to it. That is self-selection. If you think about it, that is
Mm.
literally, hey, two parts were made for each other, and through chaos theory in a way, and statistical probabilities, they find each other. Not all of them find each other necessarily. Some of them get swept out of the system without finding the
Mm.
mate or the counterpart, right? But
Uh-huh.
statistically, it happens. That is self-selection. That is self-selection. You know, you design yourself in a specific way so that your counterpart finds you.
Let's stay with that. Um, now the VC narrative is often, hey, everything needs to be bigger, more prolific, larger opportunity, larger TAM, larger everything. So staying with your example, wouldn't you like a situation where you maximize the number of counterparts available to you, perhaps to an extreme possibility where everyone is a counterpart?
Um, so I would want to do that when I don't know what my counterpart looks like, and I don't know what a winning
Hmm.
counterpart looks like. But if on the other side, so
Okay.
then at that point, I'm still in exploration mode. I still need to understand the set of possibilities. But if I actually feel like I know exactly what the winning counterpart looks like, the person that I
Hmm.
or the microbe or whatever, the cell that I want to be connected to, if I know exactly what a winner looks like and I want exactly that winner to match to me, no, then I wouldn't maximize optionality. In fact, I would eliminate optionality, and I would absolutely design and engineer myself in a way that I match, and I would design and engineer myself so that they can find me.
Yeah. So look,
Or do you see it different? Yeah,
I don't. So I think in terms of the end state, so it's actually fascinating, and that's why I enjoy doing these chats with you. I feel like we get to a similar end state, but the thought process leading into it is so
interesting.
different. So I see it as a process of elimination and filtration. To again borrow your language, eliminating counterparts that are not a
I
fit,
see.
right? To keep checking if it's a fit. If it's not, to keep eliminating or
Man,
filtering away.
why didn't I think of this earlier? I know your mind is currently in the dating space, isn't it? Is it
It
not?
is.
I was thinking you're thinking of dating playbooks, etc., but you weren't.
Oh, I see. Okay, I see what you did there. Fair play. I wasn't thinking of that, but I think that's a good shout. I think there's some
So
parallels with
why don't
what
we
you just
save
said.
the
Yeah.
dating as a bonus for the end?
Okay, let's do that.
Let's save
Let's
that,
do that.
but
Let's
but
do
let's
that.
apply maybe to the business functions first. So in my mind, let's see if there's a fourth one. But in my mind, at least I can think of three ones. So interviewing, building talent density, or joining a company. So either way you look at it. And the second one being looking for people to invest in you, or the other way around. You're an investor looking for people who want your money.
Yep.
And then the third one
Mm,
being customer context. So basically, who to sell to, or if you're a customer, who to find as a supplier, right?
yeah.
I don't know.
I'd add a fourth one as well. Potentially also the narrative or the messaging you put out to the outside world. In a not in a physical or a human sense, but in you choosing to um, align with a certain messaging or a certain theme and not aligning with others.
I can agree. So if you start with a talent, right? So I think when you're doing recruiting, and let's say you're the recruiter, um, sometimes you operate in environments which discourage you from speaking the truth and putting your real
Hmm.
self out there, or putting the company out there. So what are these discouragements? Well, there could be affirmative action environments that you operate in, and they might prevent you. By the way, I'm not saying, hey, please do something discriminatory. That is not my point. My point is, however, if you operate in such an extreme discouragement, even if you are completely compliant and everything and you're not discriminating anyone, it can have such an extreme effect of discouragement that you don't even say, hey, by the way, we believe in this and this, or we need someone that does this. This is how we do things over here, just because you might be so discouraged from actually speaking plainly and truthfully that the other side then has to sort of guess and make assumptions, and they don't really know, is it really like this over here, etc. So let's use an exact example. I tend to tell people about myself, what it is working with me, um, and one aspect that you know people like about me and some people don't is it can be very intense working with me because I have a very direct communication style. It's empathetic, it's very respectful, but I don't beat around the bush. I tell people what I see. I call them when I think they have done an amazing job, and I call them when I think the job needs to be done in a much better way and they're just not up to the level currently. High performers absolutely love this. They respect this as long as you deliver it respectfully and empathetically. um, it's very athletic in a sense, right? So if you're a player on a sports team, you don't want to guess what your coach thinks of you in order to make the team. You want to hear it. You want to then use that and put it on the field. High performers are that way. But now, if you're in an environment that discourages you to interact with talent in an extremely honest way, that discourages self-selection. And then all of a sudden, both have to either make assumptions of why they don't fit each other, or make assumptions why they fit each other, and then they might get into a bad relationship. And then they're figuring all of this out, and then 6 months down the drain, 12 months down the drain. Why? It would be so much easier if you could just everybody talk about themselves, and you could that way already start making self-selection. So I had such an example recently, and someone figured out about themselves that they were looking for something else. And I was grateful for that because that person was amazing. I would have loved to work with them, but only under the right conditions, under the right, it fits your life currently. And it didn't. For this person, this wasn't the right time. So it was just great. It was great for efficiency.
I feel like I mean, look, I completely align with this philosophy, and I think it aligns if you truly embrace what meritocracy means. I think it's part of also embracing what your style is, what your core ethos is, as well as what your imperfections and areas of improvement might be. And I think, in a previous episode, we've also discussed how founders and by extension, investors, and frankly, every individual should incorporate the practice of routinely checking what their bottlenecks are, because that's how they get better as individuals, as companies, as ventures, etc. And how will you do that without a being honest with yourself, and b accepting what the imperfections might be and what sort of style suits you best.
Why would I want to try to appear perfect if I already know nobody is perfect? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. So why would I want to have someone guessing or later discovering the imperfections? It makes no sense to me. I don't understand it. Like imagine the most extreme sense. I know we're not discussing dating, okay? So we're parking that shoot, but like marriage, a bond for life. You're making an extreme commitment. Like, why would I want the other person thinking I'm someone that I'm not? It doesn't make sense. It comes with cost for me.
Yeah. So staying, I mean, not necessarily with the dating or the marriage example, but the larger point that I think we all know that we are not perfect. And yet, Patrick, why is it so rare to actually have this state of, I guess, brutal and intense honesty, directness, or vulnerability, if you will, in seeking self-selection? So, what's your hypothesis on why that is so rare?
Um, Three come to mind. I'm sure that list is not exhaustive. So the first one is it does require you to be very self-reflected, and being self-reflected requires you to um, have a great sense of self-awareness, and then self-awareness requires you to have also self-confidence. I think it's actually the strongest sign of strength. Now, that is something that, depending on how life hit at you and what kind of trauma you had, etc., different people are at different stages of self-confidence, self-awareness, and then self-reflection. Um, So I think that's one. Two, what I just mentioned in the talent context, the environment, let's say legislation, for example, might or yeah, might also discourage you from putting that all out there, because there might
Mhm.
be, you know, penalties or bad consequences,
Mm.
like literal bad consequences, um, if you do that. So I think that's the second reason. And the third reason
Mhm.
is, maybe it's just two. I don't know. Which ones do you have?
I feel like there's which I think touches on the first point you mentioned. I feel like the fear of loss
Hmm.
works against this kind of and let me explain what I mean. So I think obviously we all know that no one's perfect and we all have imperfections. But the feeling is, I think that when we voice it out loud, there's a fear that the person or the party listening that will
Hmm.
judge us and therefore eliminate us. And I think that creates a fear of loss, right? And I think it's one of those core human psychological um, traits or weaknesses which sometimes overpowers our sense of either rationality or better senses, just because all we're doing is preventing any state of loss.
Why is it a loss to not have something that I didn't want in the first place? So I know you're talking about the emotional level, and I'm putting it on the intellectual level now. So yes, different levels.
Yes. Yeah. So um, I think part of it, going back to what you said, is whether you come from a place in your mind and in your thought process, from a place of abundance, confidence,
Mm.
and security, or there's something perhaps missing there, in terms of self belief and things of that sort. And I feel like quite often, if it's a case where something not working out, and I'm being deliberately broad here because as it's clear, Patrick, to you and me, someone who was not a fit, not being going away is not really a loss. I would count it as a win. But for example, if the way you seek validation is every interaction leading to a successful close, if that's how you seek validation, then it's a very hard game to play, to be strictly self-selecting each time, because that means you also have to constantly also say, no, this is not a fit, no, this is not a fit. Or even more painfully, someone else telling you that you are not a fit.
Quick side. Yeah.
Because
No, so go on.
yeah, because think about it. Someone else in your position, they might say, hey, you know what, I don't want to tell this other person that I'm very intense, because then they might tell me that, hey, I can't work with you, and that might be a difficult thing for them to hear. Someone else, quote unquote, rejecting you.
Can't relate, but I understand. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So now, if you're the candidate on the talent side, sometimes you might also be in a context where you just really need that salary. You know, there's I don't agree with this, but I do understand it. So sometimes in my socials, um, so I use a social feed for about 20 minutes a day, which is completely random. Or sorry, wrong statement. I'm sure it's absolutely not completely random. Which to me, sorry, I did not curate and I did not whatever subscribe to anything. I'm sure it feeds me non-random stuff. Um, but it's not like, okay, I want to have this kind of content. So it's really like better description, a mix of content. And every now and then in that content, I don't know, every few weeks or so, maybe, I have a post in there from someone, oftentimes maybe in an American context, judging by, you know, how it's being written, like Z instead of S, etc. So more like American English. Um, People would say something like, hey, I just went through an interview and they asked me, why do you want to work here? And my answer was, I want the salary. And then they would dump on
Mm,
the employer for wanting someone that perhaps has other motivations as well. And so these people then in my feed in these examples would say, hey, but what's wrong just wanting a salary and just wanting to feed your family? Nothing is wrong with that. Absolutely nothing. And life can be unfair, life can be very, very hard. I'm currently in a very privileged position that I don't have to do that. But just, three bad things happening to you, you can absolutely be in that position again. So I don't agree with it. It's not how I would approach it. Even if I were to have to work for a salary, I would still want to give I would still want to give preference to the one where it's more than that. And I would still also try to express to myself, hey, what beyond the salary could appeal to me here? So that's the part that I don't agree with. But I understand it. So why I say that is if you're on the talent side and you're not in that position, but you're in the position where perhaps you currently have a job and someone asked you for another one, or you're actively looking and exploring a little bit, and now you're choosing not to put yourself out there because you want to win this job. You're
mhm,
just increasing your chances to be unhappy. So you're giving up something that you currently have, you're going over there, and you're just making the other side make more assumptions about you, and you're going to make more assumptions because you're not going to give them the chance to actually self-select. Sorry, to help you
mhm,
self-select. An example. So let's say you hate many, many meetings. Why would
mhm,
the other side, when you could now ask, hey, by the way, how many meetings are there here? So
mm,
sounds like a straightforward question, but it's actually not that straightforward to answer because people will think about standing meetings. Yeah, we don't have that many meetings here. We have a Monday meeting, we have a Friday meeting, and other than that, it happens spontaneously. So actually, you got a non-answer. What if you just said,
mm,
I'm really not looking for something where meetings are big. I have 4 meetings a day, and I'm really not looking for something where meetings are about reporting. I'm looking for something where we can be decisive. In the meetings, we basically discuss information, and oftentimes it's wrapped in 15 minutes. My best meetings have been like that, and that's what I'm looking for. Now, when you put it out like that, you can create self-selection because now the other side might say, hey, that's really not this. That's not this, because now you've put yourself out there. But that's also how you eliminate risk and you increase efficiency for yourself, Shub.
yeah. Oh, 100%, 100%. And I think the way you phrased it, that's how my mind was processing it as a elimination or as a filtration exercise. Now, in this example that you laid out, it did need the candidate to be confident or assertive or honest, etc., to say, "Hey, I'll put myself out there. I'll say this, and I'm happy with the consequence if that the end result of that is that the process no longer continues."
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the talent context. In a investor context, so it happens every now and then that founders of companies that go into fundraising ask me, hey, how many investors should I meet? I'm curious, what is your answer to that?
So usually I don't respond with a number to that question. So the number what I usually ask is, hey, how many investors have previously been in touch, or how many investors do you think get what we are doing?
Interesting.
Yeah, that's what I usually. And the answer, by the way, often starts as low as zero, as you can imagine. So, and then we have to work more bottoms up from there.
When you, sorry, explain what you mean by get what we're doing.
It varies a bit by context. Sometimes it is about liking the narrative or understanding the model. Sometimes in the best case, it means they know all the weakest aspects of the business and yet like the opportunity. Right? That's the best case. Very rare, but that's
Hmm.
the best case. And in the loosest sense, it might mean that they like the combination of founders and narrative.
Got it. So my answer to that is usually um, if you can pull it off too.
Hmm.
if you can pull it off too.
What do-
I don't
uh,
recommend that. This is a cheeky way to start demonstrating the principle, and then I give them a different answer. But usually true. Why? Well, because once you have two offers, you can also negotiate. By the way, sorry, quick sidestep, you can always negotiate. So because the option to walk away is always there. So, but if you have two, you don't have to use the option to walk away. So you can negotiate the two against each other. Um, that much is obvious. Now, what does it take to only do two? You, if you know, and this is the point of this as an episode, if you know that you are squarely in the strike zone of these two parties, why would you talk to number three? You wouldn't. You wouldn't. It's a waste of time. You would commit to this one, because committing to
mhm,
this one will make it even better. They will be even better
mhm,
investors for you. They will make an even better offer. So you would commit to these two. There's no reason to do number three. So if you could really perfectly say, I'm in their strike zone for this, and this reason, you would commit to these two. Now, nobody can do it that perfectly, which is why my answer never is really true. After I made the principle, it's usually 5 to 8. So it's 5 to
mhm,
8 because the job is, and this is self selection now, the job is actually to figure out in whose strike zone I am. And so when founders treat a
mhm.
fundraise as that exploration, then they're actually hurting themselves in that fundraise. So there are firms who speak to 30, 35 investors, not because they have to, that also exists. And okay, that's then what you have to resort to. Fair enough, because you have no better means of identifying it. But there are also firms and founders that actually could really be picky, that have also existing investors that could tell them, hey, this guy reacts to that, this gal, they likes really this, etc. But they just choose not to. And whatever, they think that more option creates more competition. But speaking to someone who doesn't want you is not an option. That's just a time waste. That's the
Yeah,
point. So what
yeah.
you should really do is try to find the 5 to 8 and not through fundraising, but actually outside of fundraising. That can be through your investors, your angels, or because you met them ahead. Find out in whose strike zone you are. If your model is this, don't talk to people who don't like that model. It doesn't make sense. They will not back you. It just doesn't happen. If you are a founder that only appeals to a certain type of investor, talk to them. Now, what that means is, however, that you need to put all of that out there. And most founders are actually conditioned to think, I need to hide the shit. All that does, the shit comes up, Shub. It comes up. If not during the fundraise, it comes up later, and then they won't do the next check. And then you're in hot trouble there. Just don't hide it. Don't sweep it under the rug. Put it all out there, what you are, and then make a great job of articulating why that can be a great, highly ambitious, civilization level type of a business. But put out there what you are.
I mean, look, I can't say it better myself. I think that applies in so many aspects of life in general, not just fundraising or startups, but I think it goes into so many different aspects. One is being comfortable with putting yourself out there and putting either your weakest parts or whatever you think is um, the one which is most likely to be selective in nature or create a selective mechanism in the future, putting that out there and being comfortable with the result, right? Which usually is a combination of preparation, time and repetition, and maybe deriving self-belief from other means outside of just the outcome of the current process
So
you're in.
that reminds me of another discussion. So now flipping the table. Now you're in this scenario, you're the investor. What does self-selection look like for you? So it reminds me of a discussion that you and I have had. I had listened to a podcast of a revered investor, VC investor, revered brand. And I called you and I said, hey, very surprised. This person just said the coverage rate of deals in their scope is 70%.
Yeah.
70% for one of the world's most revered brands, like objectively.
Hmm.
Do you remember what you said to me?
Yeah. So originally, what happened was you asked me to guess what the coverage would be. I think I guessed something like 95 or 98%, and you told me 70. I was genuinely shocked. Um, so, and I then said, hey, I think they're just randomly presenting a lowball figure. And then you said, hey, perhaps their coverage is even poorer than that. and they perhaps really choose to only focus on stuff where they have established that it directly
Because
fits
they
with
were
them.
describing on that podcast, hey, if we spend time with the things that don't interest us, it only takes away the time from the stuff that we really want to do, and getting smarter there, getting more repetitions, getting a greater relationship, being more important to these kinds of founders. So actually, when you think about that, whether the number should be 70, different discussion, not the point. The point is it's not 100, and they don't aspire it to be 100. That that is self-selection. I think for us, the way that you and I have learned this craft is we're trying to put ourselves out there as people. We're trying to make ourselves referenceable. We're definitely making ourselves vulnerable. You know, it's something you can get attacked on, etc. And that's okay. That's sort of, you have to live with these consequences, but there are great upsides to it too. And that is that also the founders that want to work with you find you, and they build a relationship with you. And then that relationship is how you and I can also be, and the other colleagues can be, um, the partner that is being called first. You know, don't call first, be called first. So for me, that is a great thing. It's something that I enjoy the most about this profession. Um, but for that, you have to put yourself out there.
Absolutely.
So the
Yeah.
last part of that in a business function context could be customers. So I'll kick us off. It absolutely drives me nuts when I find startup websites that are clearly not talking to a customer. They're clearly talking to an investor. Like your website landing page starts with AI powered this, that, and the other. You know who cares about that?
Mm,
Investors. You know who doesn't? Customers. Really, no customer ever said, I need an AI powered this, that, and the other.
mm.
Nobody cares about it.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think we've spoken a great deal about hidden but an obvious framework. Speaks to that very closely. And as a recap, what we're talking about is stuff which is not the popular narrative, especially not necessarily the popular narrative with investors, but which is very clear, abundantly clear to your customers. And I think you're right. Quite often, it also means putting yourself out there in the effort to establish a very strong fit with the right customer and the right value proposition, rather than in trying to appear like the cool thing or the next big thing, etc., trying to represent possibly many different things to several other people who are less relevant for
So
you.
this ties back to your question here. Why do you think people do that? So in a startup context, it is also a little bit of fear of losing. Hey, maybe my market is being perceived as too small. By whom? By the investor. Your customer will not perceive your market too small. Your customer doesn't care about that either.
Yeah.
So again, it is,
Yeah.
yeah, but it does not matter. Like just communicate then how you're going to expand your business, how you're going to make it compound, what is the civilization level kind of a business that you're building, etc. But it should not be something that detracts you from actually targeting customers very well. And the best targeting is self-selection. Great example of this. So when Tesla actually built the original Tesla Roadster, this was a classic case of customer self-selection. They could have made it cheaper. They could have chosen not to brand it as for the green hipsters of the time, etc. But they did. Why? Because that came with people who had the willingness to pay a premium, and they didn't have to very expensively just find that. They literally said, hey, this is the price. It's outrageously priced. It's for people who are planet conscious. And yes, that is not the biggest
Yeah.
market, but that was not the point. The point was learning how to build great cars. So the environmentally guilty lawyer from New York self-selected into a Tesla Roadster. Isn't that great when your customers come to you? And then what did they do? They made $5,000 down payment. Negative working capital. Fantastic.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's a fabulous case study. No disagreement there
So if you
whatsoever.
can describe for whom you are perfect and you can describe for whom you are imperfect, these things will happen. Like on the molecular level, when mRNA needs to find a certain part of the cell.
Look at us talking about mRNA in 2026.
Yeah, very amateurishly, but the concept still stands and works. So what about dating?
Yeah. I mean,
We
I
we
know.
we parked that.
Oh, What what about dating? Which
The
part of dating do you
self-selection
want me to
part
talk
that you
about?
recommend.
Oh, I mean, look, there's so many different aspects there, right? Including the um look, there's all sorts of exercises done on even game theory of how dating apps work and how, for example, men use it, women use it, and who, for example, operates with a greater sense of fear of loss, and how that leads to, in some cases, self-selection behavior, and in some cases, the complete opposite of self-selection behavior. For example, and neither of us use dating apps, but for example, if one of any of our users or listeners are, ask yourself, what proportion of the profiles that you see on the app do you swipe right to? Do you swipe right
So
to
is
all of
right
them?
accepting or not
Or
accepting?
I think right
Okay.
is accepting. Or okay, let's broaden it even further. What percentage of the profiles do you accept, and what percentage of the profiles do you
Hmm.
not accept? A very large proportion of dating app users, Patrick. I'll not say which demographic. I'll just keep it.
You don't want that
Um,
lawsuit. Yep.
yeah, exactly. So pretty much pick 100% or very close to it, right? Now the question is, why are you doing that? Are you doing that because you fit with all the profiles you saw, or are you doing it out of a sense that you need to maximize your chances and you don't want to miss out? Ask yourself that, and ask yourself, are you actually maximizing your chances? Are you really improving your odds, or are you playing a different
There's a
kind of
different
game?
insight here. Is self-selection really a photo? Like, is that what you want to put out of for yourself in order to find a fit, right? So uh, it's a rhetorical question. The answer is no.
Yeah, that is true.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, in case you haven't bought it, please go on Amazon and buy Shub's book on dating between founders and investors. Shub, what is the name of the book?
VCs are from Venus, entrepreneurs
There
are
you
from
go.
Mars.
Shub has taught a lot of colleagues also good habits. So
It's not on Amazon anymore, but I
okay,
appreciate the
maybe write
plug.
Shub a letter. He'll get you a copy, signed copy.
Oh man. Oh my God. Okay.
No, you
Very nice.
it actually has been quite helpful in some instances, also with other colleagues, etc. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I think some of the things that you have also told in these instances is, hey, don't do this. Make self-selection. You didn't use the word self-selection, but that was sort of um, an act of it.
It's I mean, look, the it's a very deep rabbit hole. If you dig into how psychology works in terms of loss minimization, what you seek as validation, and how you choose to self-select. I think it's one of those profound topics which apply in so many different contexts. And I think the privilege of our profession is it allows us to see that in
Yeah,
so many different from so many different
that is
vantage
true. Now
points.
that you say that, that is absolutely true across talent, across investors, and across customers. You're absolutely right. So, in my mind, self selection is one of the most powerful tools to actually find the fit and do it efficiently.
Yeah. Hey, I really enjoyed this one. I appreciate you bringing this up. Slightly different flavor compared to our usual discussions, but I think it was very thought
You
provoking.
know, I'm glad you did. And now I'm looking at our Seinfeld list here. I could call you Schmoopy or what else? Bob Sacamano. Um,
Not what I'm guessing.
wait, Babu Bhatt was Pakistani, no? Yeah, no, they're
That's
not.
right.
They're not. But I'm gonna go buy an urban sombrero now.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
All right, sir. Happy weekend.
Happy weekend, sir.